There is a creature living in the deep ocean that breaks every rule biology has ever written. It has no brain, no heart, no blood. It has been alive on this planet for over 500 million years, longer than trees, longer than dinosaurs, longer than the very concept of bones. And yet, by every definition scientists use to describe life, it should not be able to survive. It should not be able to move. It should not be able to hunt. It should not exist at all. But it does, and what makes it stranger is this. When you cut it into pieces, it doesn't die. When you put it in a blender and pour it back into the ocean, the cells find each other again. They reorganize, they rebuild. The creature simply reassembles itself as if death were a suggestion it chose to ignore. Most people have never heard its name. Most biologists still argue about what category of life it even belongs to. And the deeper researchers look into its body, the more the standard rules of biology begin to fall apart. Because this creature isn't just alive. It's something else entirely. The animal is called a sponge. And the moment you hear that word, your brain probably goes somewhere ordinary. A yellow shape in a kitchen sink. A bath accessory. Something soft and forgettable. But the sea sponge, the real one, the one that has been drifting quietly along the ocean floor since before the first fish ever swam, is one of the strangest organisms ever documented. Sponges are animals. That fact alone confuses most people. They don't move. They don't chase prey. They don't have eyes or mouths or a nervous system of any kind. They spend their entire lives fixed to a single rock, filtering seawater through millions of tiny pores in their body. And yet, according to every genetic test ever performed, they are classified as animals, not plants, not fungi, not something in between. They are, in fact, the oldest animals on Earth. A study published in the journal Nature by researcher Elizabeth Turner in 2021 described what may be sponge fossils found in northwestern Canada dating back roughly 890 million years. If that finding holds, it would mean sponges existed hundreds of millions of years before the first true nervous system evolved. Before oxygen levels stabilized, before the ocean itself became the ocean we recognize today. Which raises a strange question. How does something without a brain survive for nearly 1 billion years? Here is where the science begins to become harder to explain. A sponge doesn't have organs. It doesn't have tissues in the way you do. What it has instead is a loose community of cells, each one performing a specific job. None of them commanded by a central authority. Some cells pull water through the body. Some digest food. Some form the skeleton. Some transport nutrients between neighbors. There is no boss, no brain, no signal telling any of them what to do. And yet, somehow, they coordinate. In the 1900s, a biologist named Henry Van Peters Wilson performed one of the most famous experiments in the history of marine biology. He took a living sponge, pressed it through a fine silk cloth, and separated it into its individual cells. Then he placed those cells back into seawater. What happened next changed how scientists understood life itself. The cells began to move. Slowly, deliberately, they crawled across the surface of the dish. They found each other. They clustered. They organized themselves back into the shape of a sponge. Within days, the animal had rebuilt itself from scratch, not from a seed. Not from a blueprint, but from its own scattered pieces, choosing to become whole again. No other animal on Earth can do this. You cannot pour a fish through a sieve and expect it to reassemble. You cannot dissolve a bird into its cells and watch it fly again. But a sponge can, and no one is entirely sure how the cells know where to go, or how they remember what they used to be. But that is not the strangest part. The strangest part is what sponges are made of. Most sponges build their bodies out of tiny structures called spicules sharp, glass-like needles made from silica. the same material that forms sand and quartz. Under a microscope, these spicules look like architectural sculptures. Some are shaped like six-pointed stars. Some form crosses. Some form hexagonal lattices so precise that engineers at Bell Laboratories once studied them as models for fiber optic cables. The scientist Joanna Eisenberg examined one deep-sea sponge, the Venus flower basket, and found that its glass fibers could transmit light more efficiently than the fiber optics used in modern telecommunications. She published her findings in the journal Nature in 2003, and they sent a small tremor through the world of material science. A creature with no brain had, through hundreds of millions of years of quiet evolution, engineered something humans had only recently learned how to build, and it had done it in complete darkness. Because that is where the strangest sponges live. The Venus flower basket, known to scientists as Euplectella aspergillum, is found thousands of meters below the surface, in a region of the ocean called the abyssal zone, a place where sunlight has never reached. It is a place of enormous pressure, near freezing temperatures, and silence so complete that most life avoids it entirely. And yet here, on the seafloor, this delicate structure of woven glass stands upright like a small cathedral, hosting an even stranger secret inside its body. Living within the flower basket are almost always a pair of tiny shrimp. They enter as juveniles, small enough to slip through the glass lattice. They grow, and they keep growing until they are too large to leave. For the rest of their lives, the two shrimp remain trapped inside the sponge, feeding on particles the sponge filters from the water, mating, and producing offspring small enough to escape and find their own glass homes. In parts of Japan, this pairing became a traditional wedding gift, symbolizing a bond that death itself could not undo. And that raises the deeper question, is this cooperation? Is it evolution designing a home from both directions at once? Or is it something we don't yet have language for, a partnership between a creature with no brain and a creature with one, negotiated silently in the dark for millions of years? Here is where it gets more interesting. Some sponges are not passive filter feeders at all. Some of them, in the deep sea, have quietly become carnivores. A study led by researcher Jean Vaiselet in the 1990s described a species of sponge in the deep waters of the Mediterranean that had abandoned the filtration strategy entirely. Instead, its surface was covered in microscopic hooks, tiny barbs, sharp and Velcro-like, that snagged passing crustaceans as they drifted by. Once the prey was caught, the sponge slowly grew over it. Cells migrated toward the trapped animal. They enveloped it. They digested it, piece by piece. Over the course of days, no mouth, no stomach, no teeth. Just a slow, patient, unthinking hunger. And yet, without a nervous system, without any signal we can measure, the sponge somehow knew when prey had arrived. It responded. It changed its behavior. It fed. Biologists still cannot fully explain how a creature without neurons decides to hunt. And this is where sponges begin to force scientists to rethink one of the most fundamental questions in biology. What is intelligence? For most of scientific history, intelligence was assumed to require a brain, a central nervous system, a network of neurons firing in coordination. But sponges have none of these. They have no neurons at all. And yet, they respond to their environment. They contract when disturbed. They regulate the flow of water through their bodies. They coordinate the movement of thousands of cells in ways that look, from the outside, remarkably like decision-making. A study published in the journal Current Biology by researcher Sally Lays at the University of Alberta showed that certain sponges could produce coordinated whole-body contractions, a kind of slow-motion sneeze in response to irritants in the water. The signal spread through the sponge from cell to cell, without any nerves at all. This shouldn't be possible. But it happens every day, on every reef, in every trench, in every dark corner of every ocean on Earth. And it forces us to consider something uncomfortable. Perhaps the ability to think, to sense, to respond is not something that requires a brain. Perhaps it is something that emerges slowly, quietly, whenever enough cells learn how to talk to each other. The deeper implication is difficult to sit with. Sponges are, in some very real sense, are distant relatives. Genetic analysis of sponge DNA has revealed something extraordinary. Researcher Bernard Degnan at the University of Queensland led a project sequencing the genome of the Amphimedon queenslandica sponge. What his team found stunned the biological community. Sponges carry many of the same genes that build the human nervous system. They carry the blueprints for synapses, for neurons, for the machinery of thought itself. They just never assembled them into a brain, which means the deep ancestor we share with every other animal on Earth, the fish. The bird, the insect, the human being was probably something sponge-like, something quiet, something without a nervous system, but already carrying the instructions for one, waiting silently in its genes for hundreds of millions of years before evolution finally used them. You, in a way, are what happened when those instructions were finally read aloud. The sponge is what stayed behind. And it is still here, right now, on the ocean floor, in caves, on coral reefs, in the crushing dark of the abyssal zone. Some individual sponges alive today are estimated to be more than 0 years old, older than every human civilization combined. They have watched empires rise and fall from beneath the water, without eyes, without memory, without ever knowing they were watching anything at all. They breathe by pulling in the sea. They eat by letting the world drift through them. They repair themselves by remembering the shape they used to be. And when a piece of them breaks off and drifts away, that piece can become another sponge, entirely on its own, with no beginning and no ending anyone can point to. They are not the strangest creatures in the ocean because they are alien. They are the strangest because they are the oldest version of ourselves, still doing the thing we forgot how to do, living slowly, without urgency, without ambition, without needing to know why. The ocean is full of monsters, full of teeth, full of hunters and hunted, of speed and violence and survival. And yet, at the bottom of all of it, quiet on the rocks, is a creature that decided 500 million years ago that none of that was necessary. That existence itself was enough. The sponge shouldn't exist. And yet, of everything that has ever lived on this planet, it may be the one form of life that has come closest to figuring out how to never stop existing at all. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, subscribe for more. See you in the next video.